Hi everyone, my name is Sari. This is my YouTube channel and you are watching my knitting podcast videos. And this is the, I think, 10th episode of Sari Knits, which is my knitting podcast. And in the previous episode, I talked quite a lot about pattern prices and test knitting compensations, and that's a topic that I will still continue today. But in addition to that, I have piled quite a lot of yarn here next to me, as well as my current main whips. So I will show those to you as well and talk about my knitting plans, what I'm planning to knit next. But I think I will start talking by talking about the pattern price thing. I've been thinking a lot about it since last week when I recorded the last episode, and many of you have been commenting on the video and also sent me private messages on Instagram and also commented below my Instagram photos about pattern prices. And to be completely honest, I still have more questions than answers. I still kind of haven't made up my mind about the whole subject, and I think neither have you, based on the feedback that I have received on this matter. So some of you have been commenting that the pattern prices are too low, and I think that's the discussion that has been going on Instagram a lot, the pattern prices and designer compensations are too low. And in my previous episode, I talked quite frankly about my finances and talked about how much work I put into designing, how long it takes for me to knit a pullover and to write the pattern, and then everything else on top of that. And if I wanted to do this more professionally, and if I wanted to put if I wanted to really do this as my full day job and professionally, then I should start putting a lot more or invest more money into this, because I should hire people helping me with all the things. But I'll talk about that a bit later. So I think people mainly think that designers don't get paid well enough, and that's also my opinion. But how to solve that problem? I think there's a lot of different voices at the moment. Like I said, some people think that I should lower my prices, but then there are people who have said that the pattern prices should stay the same, that the amount that they cost at the moment is the the right place for the price. And there have been people who say that the pattern prices are too high. So I talked about this a little bit in my previous episode. I talked about how €5 is not the same amount of money for all the people. So for example, here in Finland where I live, for some people €5 is a lot of money. When I was still studying, I think €20 was my weekly budget for food. So I would never have had enough money to buy knitting magazines like Lane magazine that cost 25 euros per issue, it would have been unattainable for me. And until only a couple of years ago, I would have never even dreamed about buying yarn that costs over 30 euros per skein. So I do know how it feels like that the pattern prices are high. But at the same time, in Finland, 5 euros is the equivalent of a large cup of cappuccino in a bit trendier cafe. A normal lunch costs something from 8 euros to 13 euros, so for 5 euros you don't even get a lunch. Going to movies, one movie costs about, I go so seldom to movies nowadays because I have a little kid, but I think going to movies is something from 10 euros to 15 euros. So you can go and see one movie for the price of 2 patterns if we are selling, if the pattern price is 5 euros. So I don't think those are like quite balanced. And especially if you go outside Finland, if you go even inside the European Union, if you go to Greece, you get a lot more things for 5 euros than what you do in Finland. And if you go to China, if you go to Mexico, if you go to India, 5 euros is a lot of money for many people. So based on that, and if I want my pattern prices to be attainable for a lot of people, if I want to be inclusive, I should lower my prices. But then again, if I lower my prices, my income falls. And even though I put a lot of time and effort into building my own business and writing patterns and selling them, I still don't make enough money to live on this income in Finland. So that's a dilemma that I'm facing. So some people have written to me that I should lower my prices because a lot of the very well established independent knitwear designers sell their patterns for less than 5 euros, so 4.90 or something like that. And because my pattern prices are about 5 to 6 euros for accessories and 7 to 8 euros for larger garments, so, such as sweaters that have more sizes than 1 or 2 sizes, such as for hats or socks. People can almost get 2 patterns from well-known designers for a pattern from me. And there has been pressure among certain designers to put the prices higher so that the price for smaller accessories would be 12 euros and for pullovers and such 15 euros. So how do I justify charging 3 times more than the well-established designers? Because if the price is higher, then I should my pattern should be somehow more valuable than the one that costs less. And how do I justify charging 3 times more? So somebody would get 3 patterns from another designer for 1 pattern from me. I don't think my patterns are that much better than the other designers. I'm not gonna start naming names, but you can go on Ravelry and check what everybody charges for their patterns. So that's a dilemma that I've been facing. Should I put my prices up to get more income, or should I lower my prices to be able to compete with the other designers? I don't know. And also somebody commented to me that if I lower my prices, that means that I will sell more patterns, but that's not necessarily the truth, because I have some patterns, some of my older patterns that I'm selling for €3 or €3.50, but they don't sell any better than the ones that I sell for €8. So there's no, I haven't seen any correlation between a low price and selling more patterns versus high price and selling less patterns. So that's not something that I have noted. And what else I was going to say? So it's really hard to find the perfect place for the pattern prices, whether I should put them higher or whether I should put them lower, or if my prices are good at the moment. But what I forgot to say in the previous episode is that nobody has ever commented to me that my prices are too high. Nobody has ever said to me that they would have wanted to buy a pattern of mine, but they couldn't afford it. So that has never happened to me, which leads me to believe that my pattern prices are okay at the moment. But I have heard from some designers that they have heard this kind of comments. So I still have to think a little bit about this, and I still think that I should start pricing my patterns based on the complexity of the pattern, because basically the price of the pattern should kind of reflect the value of the work. So if I have spent less time on an easier pattern, then I should sell it for less money than something that took me ages to knit and to write the pattern, and not just to knit and to write the pattern, but also there's a lot of work that goes into a design even before I start designing. So that is also something that I wasn't talking about in the previous episode. There's a lot of stuff in the creative work that you never get paid for. For example, when you write a submission, first of all you have to like come up with an idea. You have to look at pictures in magazines, on Pinterest, on the mood board, to become inspired, to dream up something that you would love to make with that design idea in your mind. Then start sketching, start thinking how you are going to get the idea that you have into something concrete, like a concrete idea, how you are going to knit it. Are you going to knit it from top down or bottom up or flat or in the round or sideways? What kind of yarn, what kind of needles? Then you start making swatches until you get the exact kind of swatch that you are looking for. Then you write the inspirational text to sell your idea to the publication that you or yarn company that you are submitting your work for. And if you're chosen for the publication, then fine. but you don't get paid for the work that you have already put. Of course, a well planned is easier to execute later than if you haven't really planned anything, then you have to start planning it at that point. But if you don't get selected for the publication, then you're not reimbursed for the time and effort that you have put into submitting the work. Of course, you can always resubmit the same idea, or you can use the submission as a base for your own design that you are going to self-publish. So in that sense, the time is not wasted, but you are not going to get paid for that work. And even though I wasn't submitting work, I still have to go through all those steps for every design that I make, and I don't think I calculated that into the calculations that I talked about in the previous episode. So there's so much more that goes into creative work than just the actual work that shows. So not just the knitting and not just writing the pattern and not just taking pretty pictures, but there's a lot of things going on inside my head all the time, and it never stops. So I think altogether creative work is very often undervalued. Creative people don't get paid enough for their work unless you are like a really famous designer or painter or an architect or something like that. Then you probably get enough money for your effort. But in this like smaller scale, I don't think anybody is really getting paid as much as they deserve, and that's really sad. And especially among women, we tend to undervalue our own work and our own effort, and we don't get paid, we don't ask for enough payment, and we don't pay others as much as everybody is supposed to be paid. And that is really sad. And I often hear that because my work is a fun one, and I'm trying, even myself, I'm still trying to find a balance between knitting as a hobby versus knitting as a profession. People don't really get that this is actually a lot of work. So I don't always just sit the whole day and just knit and be inspired, but writing patterns is a lot of work, answering test knitters is a lot of work, pattern support is a lot of work, answering all kinds of emails is a lot of work, writing patterns, grading, taking photos, editing photos, taking a good photo on Instagram, promoting your patterns on Instagram, and so on. It takes quite a lot of time away from just knitting, and like I said, people often say to me that, oh, you have such a lovely job, you're just knitting through the whole day, and I wish I could do that as well. Well, first of all, I'm super blessed and super lucky, and I understand how privileged I am to be able to knit the whole day, and I know this is a dream job for many of you, but it is still a job. There are many parts of it that aren't a hobby. But anyway, what I was going to say, I'm just like rambling. My point was that that when I studied to become a conservator, and when I graduated, our university headmaster held a speech at our graduation ceremony, and she said that because of the line of work we have chosen, we shouldn't be expecting to become rich. We will never become rich. We will always be underpaid. But because we get to do what we love, that should be a compensation enough for us. Because her point was that you either have to choose between money and between having a fun work. But I don't think it necessarily should be like that, because well, most of people think that doctors have a calling for the job. So if you have a certain type of calling for the job, it's like your dream job. You're realizing yourself while you are working. So why do doctors get paid a lot? Why don't we say that, okay, so because this is your calling, you shouldn't be paid a lot? And again, for creative people, for example, a lot of people who write code are creative, and I know people who write code usually get paid quite well. So it doesn't really add up, and I think it's time for us designers, for us knitters, to really think about our work and separate the work part from the fun part, and like stepping up and saying that this is an actual work and we should be paid accordingly, instead of like selling ourselves really short. And I remember seeing somewhere, somebody posted on Instagram a while ago, from Ravelry. Casey had posted somewhere on Ravelry that just a couple of % of the designers selling their patterns on Ravelry are making more than $1,000 per month. So it's really little, and I think that should change. I don't know how to do it, but I think that should change. And valuing work and putting the pattern prices up, it goes hand in hand with test knitter compensations. And like I said in my previous episode, I'm not sure if it's a good idea to work with test knitters the way that we have done until now. Like I said in a previous episode, I'm not sure if it's quite ethical for me to demand more money for the work that I do, and then use voluntary work to promote my patterns. And this has been, I think, the main discussion in the comment section of the previous video wasn't about pattern prices, but it was more about test knitting. And I think most of you commented that the people who test knit do it for the love of test knitting, and they would want to buy the pattern anyway, and they would knit the pattern anyway. And if they don't have the money to buy, if they can't buy the pattern, they don't have the money to buy the pattern, then they don't need it. But if they get it for free, when they're test knitting, then they are able to knit, and it plays into the inclusiveness. But I still stand by what I said in the in the previous episode, that I think the whole test knitting thing is a bit iffy. I don't find it completely ethical. I see the point of it. Somebody commented really well that if I don't use test knitters, then the people who actually buy the pattern and start knitting it when it has not been test knitted might be involuntarily become test knitters for me. And that was something that I hadn't been thinking about earlier, and it's completely true. But I still think the whole concept of test knitting should be like kind of evaluated. I wish we designers would talk about this a bit more among ourselves. Just a little bit background about test knitting. I think there is quite a lot of misconception about test knitting. So most of the big yarn houses and publications that I have worked for do not use test knitters at all. And I think that is something that people in general don't know. They have tech editors, and then there are people who proofread the patterns. But it might be that the designer, or if the designer uses a sample knitter, are the only people who knit the pattern before it is released. Of course, there are more people going through the patterns. There's more staff, more tech editors, more routine behind the work. But still, not all the patterns that are on Ravelry and that are from huge yarn companies and publications are test knitted. And some have started using beta knitting or preview knitting programs where it is often stated that this is not test knitting. But the fact is that the patterns haven't been test knitted before, so the beta knitters involuntarily become test knitters for the pattern, which I don't think is quite fair. Of course, the beta knitters or preview knitters, they get either the yarn for free or with a lot of discount, but still I don't think it compensates the work that it takes to knit the pattern and take great photos of it and show it off on Instagram and use all the hashtags and so on, especially if you're still test knitting it at the same time. And that is one reason why I pulled my patterns away from the Making Things app a while back. Well, the main reason was the way they handled the discussion about racism and inclusiveness, and the way I realized that they were promoting highly curated feed that turned out to be mostly just white women. But I talked about it on Instagram that for the patterns I only got a couple of euros per pattern, or even sometimes even 5 cents per pattern. But because they were paying the designers, if you got people to sign up for the app, then they gave you some money for that. But I don't think that those two can be like they said to me that I shouldn't whine about the low pattern prices because my overall income from the app was pretty fine. So that should be like enough for me. But if on Ravelry I sell my patterns and I only promote my own patterns and I get paid an X amount of money, I do not expect to be paid less than that X amount of money on another platform. If on top of that I have to do a lot of other work, so if I have to promote the app to get more people to sign up, to get more money from the signups, and take great pictures to promote the app, as well as promote my own patterns, of course I should be paid more for the work that I do to promote the app and the work that I do to promote my own patterns. Those two can't be confused together, and that is the main point with test knitting for me. I'm fine with people test knitting my patterns. I'm fine with them giving me feedback on the pattern and noting me if there is something wrong. But let's presume something that has never happened to me, but I know might happen. It's not totally impossible that this would happen. What if there's something really wrong with the pattern and people have to rip back their work many times and start again? So let's say there's something wrong with joining the sleeves and the body, knitting the pullover top down, and the whole yoke section is really intricate. And I have to recalculate the whole yoke section a couple of times to make it match. And people have knitted all the way down to the yoke or separating round, and they have to rip everything back and start again. How do I compensate for that? Because that is not just like knitting for fun and knitting because you would knit the pattern anyway. Another thing for me, what I struggle with is that I know many designers use a lot of like surveys and questionnaires that the knitters have to answer after finishing their test knits. They have to provide all the how much yarn they have used, what modifications they have done, and calculate all the measurements of the pullover. And especially for me, because I'm used to using centimeters, then I have test knitted a couple of times where I have to post a questionnaire and provide the measurement in inches, and then I have to start calculating all the measurements and turning them into inches, and it takes time. So where's the when does the just knitting for fun become knitting as work? So okay, I'm fine with people test knitting and knitting for fun. I'm fine with the knitting part. But what about the everything else that goes into test knitting? So if there is nothing wrong with the pattern, then that's fine. But if there is a lot of things that need to be corrected, and if I request my test knitters to write long questionnaires, and I want them to take great photos showing the pattern off and posting them on Ravelry and on Instagram and so on, it starts to sound quite a lot like work, doesn't it? It's no longer just knitting for fun, and that is the part that I struggle with. That is the part that I think should be compensated for. And I don't know how to compensate that work. Quite many of you commented that I could give out one extra pattern, so on top of the pattern that they have been test knitted, I could give them a code so they can get another pattern from my Ravelry store. And I don't know why I never thought about that. I have test knitted myself a couple of times, and I was never I didn't get anything more than just a pattern, so I don't know why I never thought about that. So that's something that I'm going to start doing from now on. So on top of the pattern that the test knitters are making, I'm going to give them the option of picking one extra pattern from my Ravelry store. But still, let's presume that both of the patterns are one of my priciest ones, so they are €8 per pattern, so that's €16. So €16 for the whole work of taking photos and measuring and ripping and so on doesn't sound quite fair to me. So that is something that I'm struggling a lot with, and I don't quite know the answer for that. But for the time being, I'm going to continue with the test knits as they are, and I'm gonna check my pattern prices and adjust them according to the complexity of the pattern. And also, I already have quite a lot of free patterns on my Ravelry account, and now that I'm working for Novita, Novita usually Novita makes 4 magazines every year, and every time a new magazine comes out, the patterns from the previous issue become freely available on Novita Knits website. So from I think the fall issue of Novita magazine comes out in August, so the next one comes out I think in October, and that's when the fall issue patterns become freely available on Novita Knits website. So at that point there are going to be quite a lot of more my patterns available for free for everyone, but I still think that I will try to provide more free patterns to compensate for my slightly higher pattern prices, so that everybody can find something that they want to knit. And just one more question here at the end of the video. There has been also a lot of talk about size inclusiveness in knitting patterns, and I usually grade all my patterns from XS to XXL, sometimes even triple XL, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this. Should I grade more sizes? Have you felt that you want to knit my patterns but didn't find a size that suits you? And also, usually I struggle finding test knitters for the largest sizes, so that's why I haven't really provided larger sizes, because I kind of don't want to put out sizes that haven't been test knitted, and most of the time I don't find test knitters for XXL, so I get more than enough volunteers for the smaller sizes, but not enough for the largest sizes. And if you want to knit the larger sizes and you would love to test knit for me but haven't, I would also love to know if that is because the timeline is too tight, or if there is some other reason why you don't want to test knit. So You can also send me a message, for example, on Instagram, um, a private message if you want. I would love to hear your thoughts on these matters. And at the moment I realized I've already been talking so long about this subject that I think I will cut the video here and put this into 2 parts and make a separate little episode about what I've been knitting. So you can easily watch these on 2 different occasions and find your place, or if you just prefer to watch this one and not see what I'm knitting, or the other way around, then that's fine. So this is everything I have on the pattern prices and test knitting. Like I said, no answers yet, but I will keep coming back to this subject, and I would still love to hear your thoughts, and I'm following the discussion really closely on Instagram and Ravelry and so on. But that's everything for this part of the episode, and another episode is coming soon about everything that I've been knitting, so see you in a bit.